My daughter told thousands of people on national TV that I was just an old family friend after I gave her my entire life savings to keep her business afloat. She referred to her stepfather as her real dad. What happened next was rather unbelievable. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Steve Grant from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I always figured the last third of my life would be a time for quiet things. A front porch. A paperback novel I wouldn't finish. Mornings spent walking the dog and remembering the things I used to rush through when I was younger. Making scrambled eggs, finding matching socks, folding my daughter's little laundry sets with Minnie Mouse on the front. Back then, it felt like all I did was work and wait. I worked overtime at the plant and waited for a future where I could breathe. I didn't expect my retirement to be anything special, just mine. I was 62, divorced, still had all my teeth, but I didn't have much left to give anyone, except maybe my time, and I gave that willingly, especially to her. Her name is Ava, and she's my only child. Her mother, Diane, died of breast cancer when Ava was just 8. I remember Ava's first concert at school after Diane passed. She was too scared to go up on stage, so I stood behind the curtain with my hand on her back the entire time. She sang "This Little Light of Mine" in the softest whisper, her eyes locked onto mine like the world would disappear if I let go. And I didn't. Not once in 30 years did I let go. I stayed through tantrums, through college heartbreaks, through silent treatments and missed birthdays when she got too busy. I stayed when she asked me for help with her first job application, and I stayed when she told me she was quitting that job to start her own business, a wellness brand, something about clean living and natural skincare. She needed a little money to get started, then a little more, then a lot. I gave her everything I had. My pension, my savings, the inheritance my father left me. All of it. It wasn't $1 million investment, nothing like that. But it was everything to me. $68,000 and change. I'd planned to live modestly, maybe travel once or twice. But she came to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Dad, I can't do this without you." And I believed her. Because fathers believe their daughters when they say they need them. Because I remembered all the things I'd failed to protect her from. And this was something I could give. Something that made me feel useful again. So I signed the check, kissed her forehead, and said, "Make me proud." The first year was rocky, but then she started gaining traction. She built a decent following online, opened a small boutique, got a few influencers to post about her brand. I watched her interviews like they were the Oscars, smiling so wide my face hurt. My girl. My little Ava. She wore suits now, called herself a CEO. And I never missed a chance to remind anyone who'd listen, that's my daughter. Then one day, I was flipping through channels while eating breakfast, cereal with bananas, nothing fancy, and I saw her face on TV. It was a big morning show, one of those national segments about entrepreneurial women changing the world. I dropped the spoon into the bowl and stared like I was seeing a ghost. There she was, hair slicked back, glowing under those bright lights, sitting next to the host and smiling with that tight, confident smirk I didn't recognize anymore. I turned up the volume. "So, Ava," the host said, "you've built this brand from scratch. Who supported you most through this journey?" She took a beat, laughed, and then said, "Well, first of all, my real dad, my stepdad, he's been my rock. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." I frowned. "What?" I said out loud to no one. And she added, "There's been support from, an old family friend who helped a little early on. But this was really a solo climb. Old family friend. Not my father. Not the man who raised me alone since I was 8. Not the man who sold his truck so I could pay rent on my first office. Just some guy. A vague kindness in the rearview mirror of her public narrative. I stared at the screen, mouth open, heart pounding. At first, I thought maybe I misheard. Maybe there was a glitch. Maybe the segment had been edited. But no. She went on, laughing and glowing, name-dropping her stepfather, a man she'd only known since her mid-20s, as the one who showed me what real love looks like. I sat frozen. It felt like watching your own funeral while the people giving speeches keep saying the wrong name. I thought of every sacrifice, every late night, every phone call where I stayed on the line while she cried over broken contracts and said, "I can't do this without you, Dad." I'd been her father when it wasn't convenient, when there was vomit and fevers and overdue bills. But now that the cameras were on, I was an old family friend. I didn't cry. Not right away. It was a dry, angry ache, like being sunburned inside my chest. I turned off the TV, stood up, sat back down. Then I turned it on again and rewound the segment, just to be sure. And there it was, clear as day. She erased me like I'd been a temporary placeholder for someone better. I stared at the phone. My hands shook. I told myself to calm down, to wait, to hear her side. But then I thought, why? Why should I wait to be heard again? Why let her script the version of me she finds more palatable? I picked up the phone and called the studio. They put me on hold. I didn't know what I was going to say exactly, but I knew this much. I was done being a footnote in the story I wrote with my own hands. I waited on hold for 17 minutes, long enough for my anger to start mutating, hardening from raw fury into something quieter, sharper, more dangerous. The kind of anger that makes your palms stop sweating and your voice go cold. Some producer with a too bright voice finally picked up and asked who I was and why I was calling. I didn't shout. I didn't sputter. I just said, "I'm the old family friend Ava mentioned on air, also known as her father. I want to speak." On live broadcast, there was a pause, some clicking of keyboards. Then she put me on hold again. I guess when your daughter calls you a stranger in front of the whole country, people start to listen, if only for the drama of it. They came back and told me the show was still airing, that they could maybe patch me through for a brief clarification. I told them I didn't need more than a minute, just enough to say what needed to be said. My voice didn't tremble, not once. I'd spent decades raising a girl who made me feel invisible unless she needed something. I could hold it together for 60 more seconds. They piped me through just as the host was wrapping up her segment. I could hear the tail end of his praise, inspiring young businesswoman, resilient journey, a face of modern success. Then a polite interruption. "We have someone on the line who has a quick message for Ava before we close. Is that okay?" She nodded, still smiling like nothing in the world could touch her. She didn't know it was me yet. I cleared my throat. "Hello. I'm that old family friend Ava mentioned earlier. Or, as I used to be called, Dad." The silence that followed stretched like a rope between us. Her expression didn't drop, not right away. There was a flicker, a twitch in her jaw. Her eyes darted off camera, towards someone on set, probably a producer scrambling for damage control. "I just wanted to clear up a few things," I continued, voice measured. "I raised Ava from the age of 8, alone, after her mother died. I worked nights. I packed lunches. I put off retiring because she wanted to go to grad school. And when she came to me in tears 2 years ago, telling me her business was dying, I gave her every last cent of my life savings. $68,712. Bank transfers, checks, receipts, all documented." The host leaned forward, visibly uncomfortable now. Ava's smile was gone, replaced by something closer to panic, though she tried to mask it with a confused frown. "I didn't do it for recognition," I said. "I did it because I'm her father, because I believed in her." But hearing her call me a family friend after all I gave, after all I was, that was the final betrayal. Ava opened her mouth, likely to interject, but I didn't let her. I had waited too long to speak. "So let me be clear," I finished. "I'm not bitter. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done. I gave her my money, my years, my heart. Today, I give her my silence. From this day forward, I have no daughter." The host stammered something, probably trying to salvage the segment, but I had already hung up. I sat there in my living room, the screen still glowing, the silence around me stretching thick like smoke. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, but all I felt was empty. Not a minute later, my phone lit up with texts. Old friends, coworkers, even a few neighbors who must have been watching. Most were stunned. A few were angry. "You shouldn't have done that on air," one of them wrote. "Family matters should stay private." Private, I thought. Like the way Ava privately erased me from her story? It didn't stop there. By noon, the clip had gone viral. Twitter was flooded with hot takes. Some hailed me as a legend, dad of the year, calling her out on live TV. Others accused me of being petty, of trying to steal her moment. But I didn't care about the noise. Let them talk. Let them dissect every breath I took. I wasn't trying to ruin her career. I wasn't even trying to hurt her. I just wanted her to know, clearly, undeniably, that she couldn't rewrite history without facing consequences. That afternoon, the phone rang again. It was Ava. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. I didn't answer. The fourth time, she sent a text. I didn't mean it like that. Please call me. I stared at the message for a long time. What part didn't she mean? The part where she pretended I didn't exist? Or the part where she exalted the man who showed up after the hard work was done? The man who played house while I built the damn foundation? Around 5 p.m., she finally left a voicemail. Her voice sounded small. Dad, please. You don't understand. It was a short segment. I didn't mean to leave you out like that. I panicked. I was trying to keep things simple. Can we talk? I played the message twice, then deleted it. Ava wanted to keep things simple. So did I. And simple, now, meant no more lies. No more rewriting. No more pretending that my silence was agreement. That evening, I sat down at the kitchen table with the manila folder I'd kept tucked away for years. Copies of the money transfers, check stubs, even the little thank you card she sent me after the first deposit. I snapped a photo and posted it. Just the numbers. No commentary. No hashtags. Let the facts speak for themselves. The photo of my payment receipts spread faster than I ever imagined. By morning, it had been reposted hundreds of times. A local blogger picked it up, then a bigger news site. They tied the receipts to the live broadcast segment, to Ava's business, to the now viral clip of me disowning her on national television. Headlines like Wellness CEO Disowned by Father Live on Air and Family Drama Unfolds in Real Time started making the rounds. I hadn't even tried to spin it. I hadn't said a word publicly beyond that one call. But the world filled in the blanks for me. Some called me courageous. Others, cruel. But everyone had an opinion. And suddenly, Ava's perfect story had a crack running straight through the middle of it. I didn't check my email that day. Didn't open the door either, not even when the doorbell rang 4 times in an hour. The first was probably a nosy neighbor. The second sounded like a delivery. But the third and fourth, those were her. I knew that knock. Fast and impatient, with a short pause between. I sat in the back room with the lights off and listened as she stood on my porch, talking low into her phone. Maybe to her publicist. Maybe to her stepfather. Maybe trying to spin the whole thing before it slipped further out of her control. She never used to be like this. There was a time when she was painfully honest, couldn't lie to save her life. As a teenager, she once came home shaking because she'd cheated on a Spanish quiz. She cried for an hour and wrote an apology note to the teacher. But something changed after college. She became slicker, harder to pin down. Success made her careful, image conscious. At first, I was proud. She was learning to protect herself, but I never imagined she'd protect herself from me. Eventually, she gave up and drove off. I watched her taillights disappear without moving from my chair. My phone buzzed minutes later. A text. Ava, I don't deserve this. I want to talk face to face. Please. I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed to understand how she saw this playing out. Did she think I'd come crawling back the minute she asked? Did she believe the pain of being cut off on air could be erased with a lukewarm apology and a tearful hug for the cameras? I needed her to sit in it for a while, to feel the weight of what she'd done, not just to me, but to herself. Later that night, I opened Facebook, just to see what the world was saying. Big mistake. There were think pieces now. Comment sections overflowing. One post had Ava's face next to mine from a vacation photo, captioned, "Family man betrayed by daughter's public rewrite." Another had her speaking on stage with her stepfather in the audience, suggesting she'd always preferred him. That part stung. Not because it wasn't true, maybe it was, but because I remembered when it hadn't been. I remembered the little girl who used to sneak into my room at night and fall asleep with her face pressed against my chest. The girl who called me her hero in a third-grade essay, who used to say, "I hope I marry someone like you." And now I was just a footnote. The next morning, Ava called again. This time, I picked up. Maybe I was weak. Maybe I needed to hear her voice. "Dad," she said, breathless. "Are you okay?" "You don't get to ask me that," I said, flat. I didn't think it would blow up like this," she said quickly. "It was just a stupid oversight, I swear. I was nervous. I was trying to keep things polished for the brand, and I messed up. Badly. I'm sorry. Can we talk? Off camera. Just us." I stayed silent for a few seconds longer than she expected. Long enough for her confidence to falter. "You didn't just forget me, Ava," I finally said. "You erased me. Replaced me. Gave my years to a man who showed up halfway through the story." "I didn't mean it like that," she said, tears already in her voice. "It was a soundbite. A stupid soundbite. You made a choice," I replied. "In front of the world. And now the world knows who you are when the cameras are on." There was silence. Then, soft and barely audible, "Do you hate me?" "No," I said. "But I don't know you anymore. And I don't think you know me." She tried again to talk, but I ended the call. I needed space. Not because I was petty. Not because I wanted revenge. But because for the first time in my life, I wanted to be seen by myself, not through her eyes. That night, I went out for the first time in days. Drove to the local diner, ordered black coffee and a slice of lemon meringue pie. The waitress, a woman my age with a tired smile, asked if I was that guy from the news. I didn't lie. She refilled my coffee and said, "You know, my brother did the same thing to my dad. Got famous, forgot where he came from. Don't let them make you feel bad for standing up." I nodded. I didn't have the words yet, but I appreciated the gesture. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a different name. Carmen, my late wife's sister. We hadn't spoken in a few years, but I picked up. She was wrong. Carmen said without even saying hello. Flat out wrong. Diane would have been heartbroken. My throat tightened. That name. Diane. God, I missed her. "You think so?" I asked. "I know so. Ava's always been ambitious. But this was cruel." We talked for 30 minutes. Carmen reminded me of things I'd forgotten. Like how I used to write Ava little notes in her lunchbox. How I once stood outside her middle school with a poster when she won an essay contest. I had given Ava everything, and maybe I hadn't been perfect, but I had been there. I thought going public would bring relief, like lancing a wound. But all it really did was let the poison spill out into the open where everyone could watch it fester. Ava's PR team responded 2 days later, not with a real apology, but with a carefully worded statement that sounded like it had been scrubbed clean by 5 different lawyers. "I have deep respect for the people who've shaped me, both past and present," she posted to her followers. While emotions have run high in recent days, I want to focus on moving forward with love, maturity, and privacy. I'll always be grateful to those who supported my journey. Not once did she say my name. Not once did she admit to lying. She danced around the truth like it was something fragile, like saying it out loud might break the expensive image she'd built. I sat on my back porch reading the statement over and over, stunned by how masterfully she avoided responsibility while still appearing composed. Ava had always been good with words. But this wasn't the little girl who cried when she hurt someone's feelings. This was a woman with a brand to protect. Later that week, my sister Loretta came by. She'd been quiet through the whole mess, keeping her distance like she always did when drama bubbled up in the family. But now, seeing me all over the news, she couldn't hold back. "You really aired that out on national TV?" she asked, sitting down across from me with her arms folded. "I did," I said. She raised her eyebrows. "Jesus, Martin, couldn't you have handled that behind closed doors? Like she handled it?" I shot back. "By calling me a family friend in front of millions?" She was wrong. I'm not defending her. But you know how this looks. I laughed bitterly. "Yeah. It looks like a father who finally had enough." Loretta softened a bit. She looked tired, like she'd aged 10 years since I saw her last. "You're not wrong for being hurt. I worry you've scorched the earth so bad there's no going back." "That's the point," I said. "I don't want to go back." She didn't argue, just nodded slowly and let out a long sigh. "Then I hope you find peace in that." But peace didn't come easily. Not when family friends started texting to check in, but really just wanted details. Not when distant cousins began posting cryptic messages online about keeping family matters sacred. Not when one of Ava's former high school teachers emailed me to say she'd always known Ava would outgrow small-town roots. I hadn't realized how many people had been waiting for me to fail. How many had quietly cheered for Ava's rewrite of our story because it suited their own need to escape where they came from. A week later, I got a visit I didn't expect. Patrick, Ava's ex-boyfriend from college, showed up at my door. I hadn't seen him in over 5 years. He looked older, worn down, like life had knocked him around a bit since their breakup. "I saw the broadcast," he said. "I saw everything." I nodded and stepped aside. "Come in." He sat at my kitchen table and looked around like he was trying to place himself back in time. "I always liked this house. Felt warm." "I tried," I said. "What brings you here?" He leaned forward. "Look, I'm not trying to get in the middle of things. But I needed to tell you, you're not crazy. Ava's been rewriting things for a while now. Not just about you. About everything." I stayed quiet, letting him speak. "She told people she grew up poor, neglected. Said her dad wasn't really around. I used to argue with her about it. I'd say, your dad is literally the most involved parent I've ever seen. But she'd shrug it off, say it wasn't the narrative people wanted. She needed a cleaner story for the brand. A cleaner story. Like I was a stain she needed to scrub out." Patrick looked me in the eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. But I thought you deserved to know she's been twisting this for a long time." "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Because she broke my heart too," he said. "And I finally stopped protecting her." We talked for over an hour. About Ava. About college. About the early signs we both ignored. When he left, I felt, not better, but less alone. At least I wasn't imagining it. At least someone else had seen the same girl I had. A girl who used love like currency and discarded it once the exchange rate dropped. That evening, I got another text from Ava. It simply said, "Ava, they're pulling sponsorships. I hope you're happy." No apology. No accountability. Just blame. Even in crisis, she couldn't look in the mirror. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat in the quiet and thought about the last real conversation we did before all this. She'd been on my couch, crying because a supplier had canceled the contract. She looked so small then, so lost. I held her hand and told her she was strong, that she'd figure it out, that I'd always be there. And I had been. Until now. Until she decided her truth didn't have room for me. 2 weeks passed without another word from Ava. Not a call. Not a text. Just digital silence. Thick and deliberate. I'd be lying if I said it didn't get to me. There were days I stared at the phone more than I'd like to admit. Sometimes I even drafted a reply, nothing long, just a sentence or two, before deleting it and going back to doing the dishes or organizing old tools in the garage. It was a kind of withdrawal, I guess. Like quitting a drug you didn't know you were addicted to. Being her father had been so much a part of who I was, even when she didn't want it, that letting it go felt like amputating something. Cleaner in theory, but messy in practice. What ate at me wasn't just the betrayal, though that part stung every time I replayed it in my head. It was the question that kept rising in the quiet hours of the morning when the world hadn't started moving yet. Did I go too far? It looped in my mind like a tick I couldn't shake. Maybe it was the guilt talking, or pride unraveling after the adrenaline had worn off. But the question lingered. What if I'd waited? What if I'd confronted her in private, behind closed doors, the way Loretta had suggested? Would she have listened? Would she have changed anything? Or would I have just let her rewrite the truth again, in a smaller room with no audience to keep her honest? I found myself wondering more. I started walking the neighborhood in long loops just to clear my head. Sometimes I ended up at the local park where Ava used to play as a kid. There was a crooked swing still standing, and I remembered how she used to scream with laughter every time I pushed her higher than she could handle. "Not too high, Daddy," she'd cry. Then, "Okay, a little higher." Back then, everything she needed came from me. And now she acted like I was some ghost from the attic, dusty, inconvenient, forgotten. One afternoon, I ran into Miss Florence at the library. She used to babysit Ava when she was little, and I had double shifts. She was pushing 80 now, hunched over, but sharp as ever. She saw me and smiled gently, like she already knew too much. "I saw the clip," she said. "You looked strong. Tired, but strong." "Guess that's one way to describe me," I said. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. You thinking you were wrong? I don't know, I admitted. I think I'm starting to forget what the right thing even feels like. She chuckled, low and knowing. That's what happens when you spend your whole life giving, Martin. You lose track of where you end and they begin. I stared at her, surprised by how simple and true it sounded. You always loved her more than she could hold, she added. Some people get overwhelmed by that. They think they have to run to breathe. I nodded, unsure what to say. Maybe she was right. Maybe Ava had outgrown the version of love I gave her, loyal, unflinching, inconveniently honest. Florence squeezed my hand before walking off. Sometimes, loving someone means letting them feel the ache of losing you. That line stayed with me. I repeated it in my head like a mantra. Let her feel the ache. Let her understand what it means to look around and find an empty chair where her father used to sit. Later that night, I got a call from Ava's stepfather, Mark. We'd only met once. He'd married Ava's mother just a year before Diane died, and after that, he was mostly a presence in the background, holiday cards, occasional calls. I never hated him, but I never trusted his role, either. He got to be the soft place to land while I played disciplinarian, budgeter, counselor, cook. He got credit without cost. Martin, he said, his voice oddly measured. I wanted to talk. Man to man. All right. I know things have gotten out of hand, he said. Ava's been a mess. She's confused. Is that what we're calling it? I said. Confused. She's drowning in pressure. Sponsors backing out. Followers turning. She's not handling it well. I let the silence stretch before replying. Maybe that's what accountability feels like. He sighed. I'm not defending her. What she did was wrong. I just think maybe there's still a way through this. For her. I asked. Or for me? For both of you, he said carefully. She made a mistake. But she loves you. She loved me when it was easy, I replied. When it benefited her. Now that I'm inconvenient, I'm expendable. You really think she feels that way? I know she made me feel that way. He was quiet. Then, finally, he said, for what it's worth, I always knew you were the reason she became who she is. Not me. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me appreciated it. Part of me resented how late it came. It was a kind sentiment built on years of silent complicity. When the call ended, I sat alone in the dark, no closer to clarity. Ava hadn't reached out since the last bitter text, and I hadn't responded. That silence wasn't punishment. It was preservation. I needed time to figure out who I was without her orbiting my life. For decades, every decision I made had looped back to her. Every dollar saved, every job taken, every home rented or bought. It was all for her. Now, I had to learn how to make decisions that didn't involve her shadow. That terrified me more than anything. I started therapy the following week. Nothing formal, just a grief counselor my doctor recommended. She asked me why I came. My daughter erased me, I said. She paused. And what are you hoping to get back? I looked at her and said, not her, just myself. It's strange how quiet life becomes when the storm finally moves on. Not peaceful, just eerily still, like the sky hasn't decided whether to cry again or go clear for good. A month had passed since that day on live television. The public frenzy was dying down. News cycles moved on to fresher scandals. Ava's name still surfaced now and then in articles about brand authenticity and family estrangement in the age of influencer culture, but most people had shifted their outrage elsewhere. What lingered was the aftermath, the dull ache of being both right and alone. I hadn't spoken to Ava since the message about her sponsors. She hadn't reached out again either. Part of me expected her to, maybe with another half apology, maybe a real one if she could muster it. But mostly, I suspected she was waiting for me to break the silence first. She knew me that well. She counted on my forgiveness being reflexive. Like breathing. She thought I'd miss her enough to fold. But the truth was, the silence wasn't unbearable. It was educational. I learned that missing someone and needing them aren't the same. I missed the child I raised. I did not need the woman she had become. I started spending time at the community center a few blocks from my house, just small things. Fixing a broken light fixture. Organizing donated coats. I didn't need the money. I needed purpose. Something to do that didn't revolve around waiting for a daughter who might never return in the way I once knew her. The women who ran the center were kind. One of them, a retired nurse named Brenda, liked to tease me about my grumpy silence. She said I reminded her of her late husband. He used to huff like that when the coffee wasn't hot, she told me once. Eventually, I stopped making it hot on purpose, just to watch him squirm. She made me laugh, and I hadn't laughed much lately. One afternoon, she asked me why I was volunteering. To remember I still have value, I said. She didn't laugh at that, just nodded solemnly and handed me a screwdriver. Then one day, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, sealed in a white envelope, addressed in Ava's handwriting. My name, Dad, written on the front like it still belonged to me. I waited 3 hours before opening it. Inside, the handwriting was neat, controlled, a little too polished, like she'd rewritten it several times. Dad, I've been trying to figure out how to say this without making things worse. Maybe I already have, but I'm writing because I need to be honest, maybe for the first time in a long time. You didn't deserve what I did. Not just on that show, but long before. I've been pulling away for years, and you never asked why. Maybe you should have. Maybe I should have told you. When I started building the business, everyone kept saying I needed a clean story, a shiny brand. And you didn't fit that mold. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were real. Too complicated. To me. And I was trying to become someone else. I betrayed you. I used your money and buried your name. I don't know how to fix that. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I just wanted you to hear me say it. I know what I did. And I'm sorry. Love, Ava. I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. I felt still, like something inside had finally stopped spinning. It wasn't a perfect apology. It wasn't even full accountability. But it was more than I expected from her. And maybe that meant something. Maybe not everything, but something. I thought about responding. Not to open the door again, but to acknowledge the knock. To say, I see you. From a distance. And that's where you'll stay. Instead, I walked out to the garage and pulled out a small box I'd tucked away after the fallout. Inside were things I hadn't known what to do with. Photographs, birthday cards, a crumpled paper crown she'd made me for Father's Day when she was 10. I pulled out one item in particular, a framed photo of the two of us from her high school graduation. She had her arms wrapped around me. We were both beaming. I looked at it for a while. Then I wrapped it carefully in brown paper, slid the letter inside the frame behind the photo, and packed it up. I mailed it to her the next day. No note. No message. Just the memory of who we used to be and the record of who we became. I didn't tell anyone. Not Loretta. Not Brenda. Not the men at the diner who had all picked sides and turned the story into something simpler than it was. I didn't need validation anymore. I didn't need to win. I needed closure. And this was mine. Weeks later, I got a package in return. Smaller. Inside was the watch I'd given Ava when she launched her company. A silver Bulova with the words, "Keep going, love Dad," engraved on the back. She hadn't included a letter. Just the watch. It wasn't a peace treaty. It wasn't reconciliation. It was recognition. And that would have to be enough. Have you ever had to let someone you love walk away, just to preserve your own peace? If this story hit close to home, drop a comment and tell us, when was the moment you finally said enough? Let's talk about what it really means to protect your peace, even from the ones you raised. And if stories like this speak to something you've lived through, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more powerful, real-life family dramas. You're not alone, and your story matters here. See you soon in the next story.